Today it's about a man named Elon, and he's one of the greatest business leaders and innovators the world has ever produced. He stepped forward to put his very great talents into the service of our nation, and we appreciate it. And I just want to say that Elon has worked tirelessly helping lead the most sweeping and consequential government reform program in generations. And you know the kinds of things that he's found and his people have found. He's brought a group of very smart people in, and they found things that are pretty unbelievable. I have to say that the numbers that we're talking about are substantial, but they're going to be very much more substantial with time, because many of the things that we're working on right now, we're going to have to remember Elon as we find them, but the numbers could double and triple.
Hey, Breakdown family. So Elon Musk's time at the White House has officially come to an end. Last week, President Trump sat at the Oval Office, smiled wide, and bid farewell to Musk, praising him for delivering colossal change as head of the Department of Government Efficiency, better known as DOGE. But let's be clear, this wasn't just another flashy Trump appointment. This was something else entirely. In just 130 days, Elon Musk launched one of the most aggressive assaults on the U.S. government in modern history. He walked into Washington with a chainsaw, literally. And by the time he left, entire agencies had been gutted. Foreign aid slashed. Development programs gone. 2 million federal workers fired. And for Black communities in America, in Africa, in the Caribbean, the impact was catastrophic. Because when you cut development aid to the global South, when you eliminate jobs from the very institutions where Black workers fought to get a seat at the table, when you privatize equity programs, dismantle social protections, and give tech billionaires access to government data, that's not just efficiency, that's erasure. And it gets worse. Because while most people were focused on domestic fallout, Musk was quietly wrecking America's foreign relationships, especially with Black-led nations. His relentless amplification of, quote, white genocide claims in South Africa, claims that have been widely debunked and condemned, ignited a full-blown diplomatic crisis. He didn't just tweet propaganda. He mainstreamed it, fueling Trump's decision to suspend aid to South Africa and attack its land reform efforts. So today on The Breakdown, we're asking, what did Elon Musk really do at DOGE? How did it shift U.S. foreign policy? And why should Black communities everywhere be paying very close attention? Because his time in office may have been short, but the legacy is historic and dangerous. All right, now, we're going to break it all down. But before we do, a big welcome to all of our members and subscribers here at Planet Genius. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're watching and haven't joined us yet, please consider this your personal invitation. Here at Planet Genius, we're building a home, not just a channel, a home for global Black stories that are told with truth, with care and intention. And if that matters to you, and I hope it does, click subscribe, tap the bell, and consider joining our membership community where we go beyond the headlines. All right, now, let's break it down.
Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, he immigrates to South Africa in 1950, and that's really when apartheid's just starting to kick in. The 1950s are when the first laws, South Africa had discriminatory laws before, but you see the specific apartheid laws, which are much more aggressive and in many ways reminiscent of the Nazi Nuremberg laws against Jews in the 1930s. They have very similar echoes in stripping Black people from the right to work in certain places, their movements, controlling them, confining them to areas. You already had a situation which is now, come to the fore because of recent events with Trump, Trump. But
you mean with Elon Musk giving the Nazi salute?
Yes, but also with the sanctions over land, is that the 1913 Land Act had already deprived most black people of land in South Africa anyway.
Now, before we get into the present, let's take a quick look at the rise of Elon Musk. Before he became the world's richest man, before SpaceX, Tesla, Twitter, or X, or whatever we're calling it today, Elon Musk was a white boy growing up in apartheid South Africa. Born in Pretoria in 1971, Musk came of age in a country where white supremacy wasn't hitting. No, it was the law. Where the government classified people by race. Where white South Africans, just 10% of the population, controlled almost 90% of the land and all of the power. And where the black majority lived under brutal segregation, surveillance, and systemic violence. He's rarely talked about it publicly, but the roots run deep. Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, wasn't just a dentist and adventurer. He was reportedly a leading member of the far-right technocracy movement, which emphasized white-led technocratic rule. Now, after being investigated by the Canadian government for his extremist views, Haldeman moved the entire family to apartheid South Africa in the 1950s, a place where his ideals about centralized white-run power could thrive. Musk left South Africa in the late 80s, just before apartheid collapsed. And while he said he didn't support the regime, he's also never publicly reckoned with how much that system benefited his family, his early life, and his worldview. Now, fast forward to 2025, and that history, it's echoing loudly. Because from his seat of power at Doge, Musk didn't just cut budgets. He reignited white grievance politics on a global scale. He amplified far-right claims of white genocide in South Africa. He pushed false narratives that land reform was racial revenge. And he used his megaphone not to challenge injustice, but to double down on a dangerous colonial fantasy that black power is a threat and white control must be defended. So as we unpack what Elon Musk did at Doge, we have to ask, was this really about government efficiency? Or was it about something deeper? An ideology rooted in control, hierarchy, and white supremacy, shaped in the shadows of apartheid South Africa.
Many Africans were aware that Trump's America's First policy suggested their continent would be low on his list of priorities. However, they did not anticipate the sudden suspension of foreign aid from the largest donor in the world, which halted funding for various initiatives such as disease control, girls' education, and free school meals.
This is about the rights of marginalized people. I do not have a doubt that this could be a reassessment of the international interests of the US, but at the core of this is about an anti-rights agenda. This is not about the economics of making countries such as South Africa and other African countries more independent.
Get It to Kura, a digital marketer, supports former President Uhuru Kenyatta's caution to African leaders about relying too heavily on foreign aid.
The aid he cut off for Africa, I'll just tilt towards, what Uhuru Kenyatta said. I mean, it's just like, I agree that it's a wake-up call for African leaders to do better and then not just, rely solely on international aid.
The U.S. provided over $6.8 billion in aid to the region last year.
The world should worry about the ascension of Trump. Do you think, look at what is done, WHO, how can America withdraw from WHO? The only thing he thinks about is the money they put in there, but not the benefits that accrues and the goodwill that accrues to America through that little thing. The world is in trouble.
Musk gutted government from the inside, fast, loud, and unapologetically. But the real shockwave here, it didn't stop at Washington. Because what he did inside those marble buildings on Capitol Hill rippled across oceans. Foreign aid, humanitarian programs, development partnerships that took decades to build, especially with nations in Africa and the Caribbean, dismantled, all gone in a matter of weeks. Elon Musk didn't just break American bureaucracy, he broke trust globally. And no region felt that betrayal more than Africa and the Caribbean. Now let's start with the numbers. According to the internal White House memos leaked in April, over 80% of U.S. foreign aid to sub-Saharan Africa was eliminated under Musk's DOGE directives. In some countries, that meant clinics shuttered overnight, food security programs canceled, education grants, public health initiatives, infrastructure support, all gone in one memo. Take Kenya, for example, where a $210 million USAID food security program that's been years in the making was scrapped just days before planting season. In Ghana, the U.S.-Africa Energy Partnership, which had helped electrify hundreds of rural communities, has been frozen indefinitely. In Barbados and Grenada, youth entrepreneurship funds have been halted mid-cycle, leaving thousands of young people stranded without resources. Even Prosper Africa, a flagship bipartisan initiative designed to boost U.S.-Africa trade and investment, wasn't spared. Launched in 2019 and expanded under Biden, Prosper Africa was one of the few programs that prioritized economic partnerships over traditional aid, supporting African small businesses, entrepreneurs, and infrastructure deals with American firms. Under Musk, terminated. No warning, no transition, just gone. Then there's Haiti, still reeling from political collapse and climate disaster. Before Musk, the U.S. was one of its last lifelines. After DOGE, all aid has been suspended. But this wasn't just about money, my people. It was about message. Musk made it clear that he and the Trump administration no longer saw value in U.S. partnerships with Black nations and even Black communities. In fact, he publicly mocked the idea that Africa deserved American taxpayer dollars, calling aid charity for corrupt regimes, quote, and retweeting memes that painted the continent as a welfare state. He said America's new foreign policy should be ROI-driven, not guilt-driven. And just like that, decades of fragile trust, already under strain, collapsed. But the most dangerous piece of all of this, South Africa. While Musk was axing aid behind the scenes, he was fanning the flames of racial division online, amplifying discredited claims of white genocide and targeting the country's Black-led government for pushing land reform. And his influence worked. In February, President Trump, citing Musk's own statements, suspended all diplomatic aid and security cooperation with South Africa, accusing the government of, quote, racial persecution and threatening sanctions over its Land Expropriation Act. That's right, the same Elon Musk who grew up under apartheid helped ignite a U.S. attack on South Africa for trying to undo its legacy. So the question is, was this about budget cuts? Or was it about backlash? Backlash to rising Black power. Backlash to economic freedom. Backlash to sovereignty. Backlash to the idea that Black nations can stand on their own and say, this land is ours, and we're not asking permission. And while Musk has now exited the DOGE stage, the damage is done. Black communities across the globe are once again forced to rebuild with fewer resources, fewer allies, and more reason than ever to ask, who is deciding our fate and in whose interest?
The Trump administration has already laid off many federal workers, we know that, many who are in their first year of employment. Now they're working to cut employees who have more tenure. CBS's Erica Brown has more from the White House.
President Trump says more government workers will soon be fired.
We're cutting down the size of government. We have to. We're bloated. We're sloppy. We have a lot of people that aren't doing their job. We have a lot of people that don't exist.
The announcement came as he held the first cabinet meeting of his second term. Government agency heads received a memo today instructing them to submit reorganization plans by March 13th that include large-scale reductions in force.
Elon Musk spoke at length during the cabinet meeting addressing the Department of Government Efficiency's coordination with agencies to make the job cuts.
We wish to keep everyone who is doing a job that is essential and doing that job well. But if the job is not essential or they're not doing the job well, they obviously should not be on the public payroll.
The president defended Musk's email to federal workers demanding they list 5 recent accomplishments or risk losing their jobs.
Those million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble.
Now, while the world watched foreign aid disappear overseas, something quieter but just as devastating was happening right here at home in the U.S. Elon Musk's domestic cuts didn't just shrink government, they erased opportunity. Within weeks of Doge taking over, nearly 2 million federal jobs were slashed. From the EPA to the Department of Education to the Small Businesses Administration, whole departments were streamlined into irrelevance or privatized. Now here's why that matters for Black America. The federal government is the largest employer of Black professionals in the U.S., not just because of diversity efforts, but because historically, the public sector was one of the few places where Black talent had a shot at upward mobility, job stability, and middle-class wealth. When Musk brought his chainsaw approach to Washington, he didn't just target bureaucracy. He cut directly into Black economic stability. Entire diversity offices dissolved. Civil rights enforcement teams defunded. Programs like the Minority Business Development Agency were stripped of resources, jeopardizing decades of progress for Black entrepreneurs and small business owners. And then there's data. Musk's Doge didn't just eliminate jobs, it centralized access to government data systems under the guise of, quote, efficiency. That includes education records, housing applications, federal contracts, and yes, civil rights compliance audits. Now let's be real. A man who owns Starlink, Tesla, X, formerly Twitter, aka the global megaphone, being given access to real-time federal data of millions of Americans. That's not governance. That's surveillance with a profit motive. Even members of Congress raised red flags. In March, Representative Jasmine Crockett called Musk's role dangerous. And she wasn't alone. Protests erupted outside federal buildings in Atlanta, Detroit, and D.C., led by unions, Black workers, and civil rights organizations demanding a reversal of Doge policies. But as of now, none of those cuts have been reversed. So Musk may be gone, but his blueprint remains. So now that Elon Musk has officially stepped down from Doge, we could breathe a sigh of relief, right? Wrong. Because here's the thing about systems. When the architect leaves, the structure stays. The agencies are still gutted. The programs are still gone. The foreign partnerships are still severed. And the damage to Black communities at home and abroad has already taken root. Musk was in power for just over 4 months. But in that time, he redefined what it means for billionaires to hold state power. No oath, no oversight, just influence, ideology, and a chainsaw. He walked into government and treated it like a startup. If it wasn't profitable, if it didn't serve his worldview, he cut it. Black workers, disposable. Black nations, collateral. Black progress, optional. And what's worse, he's still advising the Trump administration behind closed doors. His ideas, his tech, his worldview, they're still shaping the system. So what's the legacy of Doge? It's not just budget cuts. It's the normalization of dismantling public institutions. It's the blueprint for privatizing government. It's the reminder that Black people globally can never take hard-won progress for granted. Not when a billionaire can walk in and erase it all in 130 days. So here's the question I want to leave you with, my people. What happens when the richest man in the world gets the power to decide who matters and who doesn't? And more importantly, what are we going to do the next time they come for our future, dressed up as efficiency? Because they're not just cutting programs, they're cutting us out of the picture. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's it for today's breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If this episode hit you, share it. If you raise questions, drop them in the comments. And if you know someone who still thinks this was just about budgets, send them this breakdown. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face-to-faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.